Right now, millions of Americans are checking their bank accounts, wondering when they'll see that extra money everyone's been talking about. And here's what you need to know. President Trump just put his signature on something that could change how your monthly income looks for the rest of this year. We're talking about a potential $2,000 that's got Social Security recipients, retirees, and fixed-income households across all 50 states asking the same question. Is this real? And when does it hit my account? Here's the truth that mainstream news isn't breaking down clearly. This isn't about some vague promise or political talking point. There's an actual executive order on the books. There are real dividend checks being processed, and there's a specific timeline that affects when and if you'll qualify. But here's the catch. Not everyone who thinks they're getting this money actually will. The eligibility requirements are more specific than most people realize, and if you don't understand the fine print, you could miss out entirely. In the next few minutes, I'm going to walk you through exactly what this executive order does, who qualifies for these dividend checks, and most importantly, what you need to do right now to make sure you're not left waiting while your neighbors are cashing their checks. Let me be completely straight with you about what's happening right now, because there's so much confusion swirling around about this $2,000 payment that I want to make sure you understand the full picture before we go any further. The first thing you need to know is that when we talk about dividend checks and executive orders coming from the White House, we're dealing with something that touches multiple programs at once, and that's exactly where people are getting mixed up. You've probably heard your neighbor talking about it at the grocery store, or maybe your grandkids called asking if you're getting this money. And the honest truth is that the answer isn't the same for everyone, which is why we need to break this down piece by piece so you know exactly where you stand. Now, when President Trump signed this executive order, what he actually did was create a framework that impacts several different types of payments that Americans receive. And this is crucial to understand because the media headlines are making it sound like it's one simple check going to everyone, but that's not quite how it works in reality. What we're really looking at here is a combination of adjustments to Social Security benefits, changes to how certain supplemental payments are calculated, and yes, actual dividend-style payments that are being issued to qualifying individuals, based on very specific criteria that we're going to walk through together. The reason this matters so much is that if you don't understand which category you fall into, you might be waiting for money that's coming through a completely different channel than you expect. Or worse, you might not be taking the necessary steps to ensure you actually receive what you're entitled to. Let's start with the Social Security component, because this is where most of the confusion is happening for people who are already receiving their monthly benefits. The executive order doesn't actually add $2,000 on top of your regular Social Security check in one lump sum, and I know that's disappointing to hear if that's what you were expecting. But stay with me because what it does do is potentially more valuable in the long run. What's actually happening is that there's been a recalculation of how cost of living adjustments are applied, combined with a one-time supplemental payment that's being distributed to individuals who meet certain income thresholds and have been receiving Social Security for a minimum period of time. The way this works is that the Social Security Administration is going back through records from the past 18 months and identifying people who may have been underpaid due to calculation errors or who qualify for additional support based on new economic data about inflation and living costs that weren't factored into previous adjustments. Here's where it gets really interesting and where you need to pay close attention. The $2,000 figure that everyone keeps talking about isn't actually a fixed amount that every single person receives. Instead, it represents the maximum potential payment that someone could get if they qualify under all the different categories that this executive order addresses. Some people are going to receive the full $2,000. Other people might receive $1,200, some might get $800, and unfortunately some people aren't going to receive anything additional at all beyond their regular monthly payments. The determining factors include how long you've been receiving Social Security, what your current monthly benefit amount is, whether you're also receiving supplemental security income, whether you filed your taxes for the most recent year, and believe it or not, even which state you live in can affect the timing and amount, because different states process these federal payments through different systems. Now let's talk about this dividend check terminology, because that's creating another layer of confusion that I want to clear up for you right now. When the executive order uses the word dividend, it's not talking about stock dividends or investment returns like you might be thinking if you've ever owned shares in a company. What they're referring to is a concept that treats American citizens as stakeholders in the national economy. And the idea is that when certain economic conditions are met, and there are federal surpluses or reallocation of funds from specific programs, those funds can be distributed back to citizens as a form of economic dividend. Think of it almost like a tax refund, except it's not based on taxes you paid, but rather on your status as a beneficiary of certain federal programs and your economic situation as measured by your income and benefits history. The mechanics of how these payments are actually being processed is something that everyone needs to understand, because it directly affects when you're going to see this money, if you're eligible for it. The Treasury Department is working with the Social Security Administration to cross-reference databases and identify everyone who qualifies, but this isn't happening all at once in a single batch. Instead, they're processing payments in waves, and the wave you're in depends on several factors, including when you first started receiving Social Security, how you normally receive your payments, whether you have direct deposit set up, and whether all your information is current in the Social Security system. What this means in practical terms is that some people started receiving their supplemental payments as early as 3 weeks ago. Other people are getting theirs this month, and some people won't see theirs until next month or even the month after that. And all of those scenarios are completely normal and expected based on how the system is designed to work. One of the biggest mistakes I'm seeing people make right now is assuming that if they haven't received anything yet, that means they don't qualify or that something went wrong, and that's simply not true. In most cases, the reality is that the vast majority of payments are still being processed. And unless you receive an official notice from the Social Security Administration specifically telling you that you don't qualify, you should assume that your payment is simply still in the queue waiting to be processed. However, and this is really important, there are some situations where you might need to take action to ensure you receive your payment, and this is where a lot of people are getting tripped up because they're not aware that action is required. If you moved in the past year and didn't update your address with Social Security, that could delay your payment significantly or cause it to be sent to the wrong location. If you changed bank accounts and didn't notify Social Security about your new direct deposit information, your payment might be sent to a closed account and then it has to be reissued, which adds weeks or even months to the process. If you're someone who doesn't normally file a tax return because your income is below the threshold, you might need to file what's called a simple return or claim form just to verify your eligibility for this supplemental payment, even though you don't owe any taxes. These are the kinds of details that aren't being clearly communicated in most of the news coverage, but they're absolutely critical to whether you actually receive your money in a timely manner or whether you end up waiting far longer than necessary. There's also a component of this executive order that deals specifically with people who are receiving both Social Security retirement benefits and supplemental security income at the same time, and if that's your situation, you need to understand that your payment calculation is going to be different from someone who only receives one or the other. The reason for this is that when you receive both types of benefits, there are coordination rules that prevent you from being paid twice for the same thing, but those same rules can also sometimes mean you end up getting a larger supplemental payment under this new executive order, because the calculation takes into account your total economic situation, rather than just looking at one program in isolation. What I'm seeing happen is that people in this dual recipient category are sometimes getting their payments split into two separate deposits that come at different times, which is causing confusion because they're expecting one payment of $2,000, but instead they're getting maybe $1,100 1 week and then $600 3 weeks later. And both of those together make up their total supplemental payment. Let's talk about the timeline for a moment, because I know the question on everyone's mind is when exactly they can expect to see this money in their account. Based on the official guidance that's been released and the patterns we're seeing from people who have already received their payments, here's what appears to be happening. If you're someone who has been receiving Social Security for more than 5 years, has direct deposit set up, and has all your information current in the system, you're in the first wave of payments, and you should be seeing your money sometime between now and the end of this month. If you're someone who started receiving Social Security more recently, maybe in the past couple of years, or if you receive your benefits by paper check instead of direct deposit, you're likely in the second wave, which is being processed over the next 30 to 45 days. And if you're someone who has any kind of complication in your record, maybe you've had breaks in your benefits, or you receive benefits based on someone else's work record, like a spousal or survivor benefit, You might be in the third wave, which could extend into early next year. Now, I want to address something that's causing a lot of anxiety for people. And that's the question of whether you need to apply for this payment or whether it happens automatically. The official answer is that for most people who are already receiving Social Security benefits, the payment should be automatic and you don't need to do anything. However, the reality on the ground is a little bit more complicated than that. While it's true that the Social Security Administration is supposed to automatically identify everyone who qualifies and process their payments without requiring an application, there are certain situations where you might need to verify your information or respond to a request for additional documentation. If Social Security has any questions about your eligibility, or if there are discrepancies in your record that need to be resolved before they can issue your payment, they're supposed to send you a notice explaining what information they need from you. The problem is that some of these notices are getting lost in the mail, or people are receiving them but not understanding what they're being asked to do, and as a result, their payments are being held up unnecessarily. This brings me to something really important that I want every single person watching this to do as soon as possible. You need to create or log into your My Social Security account on the official Social Security Administration website, because that's where you're going to find the most accurate and up-to-date information about your specific situation. When you log into your account, you should be able to see whether a supplemental payment has been processed for you, what the amount is, and when it's scheduled to be paid. You'll also be able to see if there are any outstanding issues that need to be resolved or any actions you need to take. If you don't already have a My Social Security account, setting one up takes about 15 minutes, and it's absolutely worth doing because it gives you direct access to your official records rather than relying on secondhand information or rumors about what might be happening. Here's another critical piece of information that not enough people are talking about. There are scammers out there right now who are taking advantage of all the confusion around these payments to try to steal people's personal information and money. You need to be extremely careful about any phone calls, emails, or text messages you receive that claim to be about your dividend check or supplemental Social Security payment. The Social Security Administration will never call you out of the blue and ask for your Social Security number, bank account information, or any kind of payment or fee to process your benefits. If someone contacts you claiming they can help you get your payment faster, or claiming that you need to verify your information to receive your money, that is a scam, and you should hang up immediately. The only legitimate way to get information about your payment is to log into your My Social Security account, call the official Social Security phone number that you can find on their website, or visit your local Social Security office in person. The bottom line here is that, yes, there is real money being distributed to millions of Americans as a result of this executive order, but the details of who gets what and when are much more nuanced than the simple headlines would have you believe. If you're eligible for a supplemental payment, it will come, but you might need to be patient, and you might need to take some proactive steps to make sure your information is current in the system. Don't panic if you haven't received anything yet, but do take the time to check your My Social Security account and make sure there aren't any issues preventing your payment from being processed. And please be extremely skeptical of anyone who contacts you claiming they can help you get your money faster, because those are almost always scams designed to take advantage of people during times of confusion like this.